Somewhere in your garden right now, possibly within 10 feet of where your children play or where your dog rolls in the grass, there may be a plant that could kill them. Not a rare plant. Not a wild plant that snuck in from the woods. A plant you bought on purpose at a respectable garden center from a label that said nothing about danger. A plant your mother or your grandmother probably grew, and her mother before her, because for centuries these plants were considered beautiful enough that no one bothered to ask the harder question. What is the cost of growing them? Most gardening videos will not tell you what I am about to tell you. They will show you these plants in catalog photographs and tell you how to space them, how to fertilize them, and how to encourage them to bloom. They will not tell you that one of them contains a compound used in real-world poisoning cases. They will not tell you that another one can be absorbed through your skin while you are pruning it without gloves. They will not tell you that a third one is structurally damaging foundations of homes across 2 continents, and that property values are dropping wherever it spreads. 11 plants. Every single one of them sold openly at garden centers in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom right now. Every single one of them dangerous in ways the label will never warn you about. Some of them threaten your pets. Some of them threaten your children. Some of them threaten the actual structure of your house. By the time we get to plant number 7, you are going to look at your own garden differently. You may even walk outside afterward and remove something you have been growing for years. Let us begin. Plant 1, Foxglove, Digitalis purpurea. The tall, majestic flower spire that defines almost every photograph of an English cottage garden ever published. The vertical spikes of speckled bell-shaped flowers in pink, purple, cream, and white. The plant you have seen in every garden magazine for the last 50 years. The plant that, hidden inside its beautiful biology, contains one of the most powerful cardiac toxins in the natural world. Every part of foxglove is poisonous. The leaves, the stems, the flowers, the seeds, and even the water in a vase that has held cut foxglove stems. The plant produces cardiac glycosides, including the compound digitalis, which directly affects the rhythm and force of heartbeats in any mammal that consumes it. In controlled pharmaceutical doses, digitalis is a real heart medication used to treat specific cardiac conditions. In the uncontrolled doses a curious child or a dog might encounter in a garden, it is a serious medical emergency. The danger is amplified by the appearance of the plant itself. Foxglove flowers are visually appealing to children. The bell-shaped blooms look exactly like something a small child would want to pick, hold, or play with. Cases have been recorded of children who put the flowers in their mouths simply because the shape invited it. Cats and dogs have been poisoned chewing the leaves, and grazing animals like horses and goats are at especially high risk if foxglove is anywhere near pasture or fence lines. There is a second problem with foxglove that compounds the first. The plant is a prolific self-seeder. A single mature foxglove produces thousands of tiny seeds that scatter on the wind, landing throughout your garden and your neighbors' gardens, germinating wherever conditions are favorable. 2 plants this year quietly become 20 plants next year, and within 3 or 4 seasons, you have a self-sustaining colony spreading in every direction. Removing them once is not enough. They have to be dug out completely, including any seedlings, and the soil monitored for new germinations for several years afterward. If you currently grow foxglove and you have small children, indoor cats that go outside, or any dogs of any age, remove it. There are dozens of equally beautiful vertical flowering perennials that are not poisonous. Penstemon, lupine, delphinium hybrids that are non-toxic, and snapdragons all produce similar visual effects without the danger. The cottage garden look does not require a plant that could send your child to the emergency room. Plant 2, Lily of the Valley, Convallaria majalis, the plant most often described as elegant. The plant traditionally carried by brides on their wedding day. The plant nestled in countless old garden borders for its sweet fragrance and its delicate nodding white flowers. The plant that contains many of the same cardiac toxins as foxglove in a smaller, more easily accessible package. Lily of the Valley is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8 and grows successfully across nearly all of North America and the United Kingdom. The flowers are small, white, and bell-shaped, hanging on one side of a slender, curved stem above bright green spear-shaped leaves. The fragrance is genuinely lovely, which is exactly why this plant has remained popular for hundreds of years, despite its toxicity being well documented in every medical reference book. Every single part of the plant is poisonous. The leaves, the flowers, the small red berries that form after flowering, the roots, and the underground rhizomes. The compounds responsible, convalitoxin, and several related cardiac glycosides, act on the heart in much the same way as the toxins in foxglove. Symptoms in pets and children can include vomiting, irregular heartbeat, low blood pressure, and in severe cases, cardiac arrest. The berries are particularly dangerous because they are bright red, small, and visually appealing to children who may mistake them for safe edible berries. The toxicity is only half of the problem. Lily of the valley spread by underground rhizomes called pips, and the spread is essentially impossible to control once the plant is established. A single small starter plant becomes a dense, impenetrable mat within 4 to 5 years, choking out every other plant in the bed and pushing outward in all directions through the soil. Trying to remove an established colony is one of the most thankless and exhausting jobs in residential gardening. Even after months of digging, fragments of rhizome left in the soil will sprout new plants, and the colony will rebuild itself. If you already have lily of the valley in your yard, and you have pets or children, the responsible action is removal. If you must have something similar in appearance, sweet woodruff offers a comparable delicate white flowering ground cover, smells equally sweet, and contains no dangerous toxins. 2 plants in, and I want to ask you something honestly in the comments below. How many of these have you been growing for years without ever knowing the danger? Tell me which ones, and tell me whether you have small children or pets at home. The reason I ask is that almost every gardener I talk to has at least one of these plants somewhere on their property. You are not alone in this. The information about these plants was never communicated to you when you bought them. That is precisely why this video exists. Plant 3, monkshood, also known as wolfsbane, Aconitum napellus, and several related species. This is, by the assessment of multiple poison control authorities, one of the single most dangerous plants commonly available in the residential garden trade. And it is sold openly, with no warning labels, in nurseries across the English-speaking world. The flowers are striking. Tall spires of deep blue-purple blooms, shaped exactly like the hooded robes of medieval monks, which is where the common name originated. Monkshood thrives in part-shade conditions where many other dramatic flowering perennials struggle, which makes it especially appealing to gardeners trying to add color to shaded borders. It is, on visual merit alone, one of the most beautiful perennials in cool climate gardening, and it is deadly. Every part of the plant contains aconitine, a neurotoxin so potent that it has been used historically as a poison for arrow tips, in spear hunting, and in documented assassinations stretching back to antiquity. The compound affects nerve signaling, causing numbness, tingling, severe cardiovascular disturbances, and at sufficient exposure, death. There is no specific antidote. Medical treatment is supportive only. What makes monkshood especially dangerous in a residential setting is the route of exposure. Unlike many toxic plants where ingestion is the only meaningful risk, aconitine can be absorbed directly through the skin. Gardeners who prune monkshood without gloves, who handle the leaves with bare hands, or who have small cuts or abrasions on their fingers, can absorb a meaningful dose simply through contact. Cases have been reported of professional gardeners experiencing symptoms after a single afternoon of pruning monkshood without protection. If you currently grow monkshood, the safest action is to remove it entirely while wearing heavy chemical-resistant gloves, long sleeves, and eye protection. Dispose of the plant material in a sealed bag rather than in compost. Wash all tools thoroughly afterward, and do not grow this plant if children or pets have any access to your garden. The visual reward of those blue-purple spires is not worth the risk. Substitute with delphiniums for the same vertical structure and a similar color palette, both of which are mildly toxic but nowhere near the danger of aconitum. Plant 4, wisteria, specifically the Chinese and Japanese species, Wisteria sinensis, and Wisteria floribunda. The romantic cascading vine of countless photographs, draping purple or white blooms over pergolas, porches, and arbors in the most photographed gardens in the world. And one of the most destructive plants you can introduce to a residential property. Wisteria is a woody perennial vine, not a soft annual climber. It develops trunk-like main stems over time, sometimes reaching the thickness of a man's leg after 20 years of growth. The vine grows aggressively in every direction simultaneously, climbing whatever surface is nearby and gripping it with enough force to physically damage the structure underneath. Wooden pergola posts warp and split under mature wisteria growth. Gutters tear away from roof lines, roof shingles lift and separate. The plant has even been documented prying decorative columns off the fronts of older homes. Worse still, wisteria does not stop at structures. It will climb directly into nearby trees and strangle them, wrapping its woody stems tightly around the trunk and major branches, restricting growth and eventually killing the host tree over a period of years. Mature trees worth thousands of dollars have been lost to wisteria that was originally planted as a small ornamental vine 10 or 15 years earlier. And there is a toxicity component that gardeners with pets need to know about. Wisteria seed pods are large, brown, fuzzy, and visually interesting to dogs and curious animals. The seeds inside, along with the pods themselves, contain wisterin and several related toxic glycosides. Ingestion causes severe gastrointestinal distress in dogs and cats, sometimes requiring veterinary intervention. The toxicity is rarely fatal, but is genuinely unpleasant and expensive to treat. If you want the cascading purple flower effect, there is a vastly better alternative. American wisteria, Wisteria fruitescens, particularly the cultivar Amethyst Falls, is native to the southeastern United States. It produces similar beautiful purple flower clusters, but grows at roughly 1/10 the speed of the Asian species, never reaching the destructive size or vigor. It still requires support, but it will not destroy your pergola or kill your trees. Plant the native species and skip the Asian forms entirely. Plant 5. Oleander, Nerium oleander. The evergreen flowering shrub of the warmer American states, of southern Europe, and of the entire Mediterranean basin. The plant lining highways across California, Texas, Florida, and Arizona, blooming in heavy clusters of pink, red, white, or salmon for the full length of summer. The plant most homeowners assume must be safe because they see it everywhere, planted publicly, with no apparent precautions taken. It is one of the most lethally toxic ornamental plants legally sold in the United States. Every single part of oleander is poisonous. The leaves, the flowers, the stems, the bark, the roots, and the latex sap that bleeds from any cut surface. The plant contains a cocktail of cardiac glycosides similar to those in foxglove, but in significantly higher concentrations and with significantly greater potency per unit of plant mass. A single oleander leaf, chewed and swallowed by an adult, can cause serious cardiac symptoms. A small handful of leaves can be lethal. Children, dogs, cats, horses, and livestock are all at high risk. There is an additional hazard that almost no homeowner is warned about. The smoke from burning oleander branches is itself toxic. The cardiac compounds aerosolize when the plant material burns, and inhalation can cause respiratory distress, irregular heart rhythms, and serious medical consequences. People have been hospitalized after using oleander wood for cooking, fires, or grilling, not realizing what they had. Never burn oleander cuttings. Never compost them in piles where the material might be turned and inhaled. Bag them, seal them, and dispose of them with regular household waste, or take them to a green waste facility that processes such material safely. The plant is hardy in USDA zones 8 through 11 and is genuinely beautiful, which is why it remains popular despite the documented danger. But there is no scenario in which planting oleander makes sense if you have pets, small children, or visitors, with either of those who come to your home. Substitute hibiscus or Rose of Sharon for similar visual impact in warm climates. Both provide bold, continuous bloom without any meaningful toxicity. Plant 6. Japanese knotweed. Rhaenutria japonica, sometimes still sold under the older botanical name Polygonum cuspidatum. This is the only plant on this list that, in some regions, has been the subject of actual legal action against property owners who allowed it to spread. The only one where mortgage lenders sometimes refuse to finance a home purchase if it is found growing on the property. The only one classified as a severe structural and environmental hazard by government agencies on multiple continents. Japanese knotweed produces attractive bamboo-like hollow stems, broad heart-shaped leaves, and lacy sprays of creamy white flowers in late summer. In catalog photographs, it looks almost tropical, like something you would expect to find in a botanical garden conservatory. That visual appeal is exactly how it spread across 2 continents in the first place. Victorian-era plant collectors imported it as an ornamental in the 1800s, and within 100 years it had escaped every garden it was planted in and naturalized across vast areas of North America, Europe, and the United Kingdom. The destruction it causes is genuinely difficult to overstate. The rhizome system extends as deep as 10 feet below the soil surface and as wide as 20 feet from each visible plant. Those rhizomes can grow through asphalt driveways, crack concrete foundations, lift patio slabs, damage drainage systems, and force their way up through the floorboards of garden sheds. Property values have been documented to drop substantially when knotweed is confirmed on a parcel of land. In the United Kingdom, sellers are legally required to disclose its presence to buyers, and lenders often refuse to issue mortgages without a certified treatment plan in place. What makes this plant uniquely difficult to remove is its regenerative capacity. A rhizome fragment as small as a fingernail, dropped in fresh soil anywhere, can sprout an entirely new colony. This means every standard removal method, digging, tilling, or breaking up the root system, actually risks spreading the plant rather than eliminating it. Effective control requires repeated chemical treatment over multiple years, performed by professionals familiar with the plant, and disposal of all material as restricted hazardous waste rather than ordinary yard refuse. If you have Japanese knotweed on your property, do not attempt to remove it yourself. Contact a certified invasive plant specialist or your local agricultural extension office immediately. If you are considering buying a property where it grows, factor in the cost of professional remediation, which can run into tens of thousands of dollars for a serious infestation. And if anyone, anywhere, tries to sell you Japanese knotweed at a nursery, walk out of that nursery and do not come back. 6 plants in, and if even one of these has surprised you, do me one favor right now before plant number 7. Subscribe to this channel, not at the end of the video, right now. Because this information is exactly the kind of thing that should be common knowledge among homeowners, and it is not. Help me get it to more gardeners by subscribing. The button is right below the video. Plant 7, the castor bean plant. Ricinus communis. This is the one I told you would change everything. Pay close attention. Castor bean is grown as a dramatic ornamental in warmer American climates, hardy as a perennial in USDA zones 9 through 11, and grown as a fast-growing annual in colder zones where it dies back at first frost. The leaves are enormous, deeply lobed, and tropical in appearance, in shades of green, bronze, and deep purple depending on the cultivar. The plant produces unusual spiky red seed pods that contain large mottled seeds resembling decorative beans, which is exactly how the plant got its common name. It is, by any visual measure, an exotic and striking garden specimen. The seeds contain ricin, the same rhizin you may have heard about in connection with notorious assassination cases, in connection with mailed letter incidents involving public figures, in connection with terrorism investigations. The same ricin that is one of the most potent naturally occurring toxins known to science, with a lethal dose for an adult measured in milligrams rather than grams. That ricin is sitting inside a seed pod growing on a plant that any garden center in a warm climate will happily sell you, with no warning label and no precautions taken. I want to be very careful in how I describe this, because there is no scenario in which any household needs to know operational details about the danger. What you need to know is simply this. The seeds are visually appealing to children who have mistaken them for ordinary beans. Pets have chewed on fallen seed pods. Cases of accidental poisoning, both human and animal, are documented in medical literature every year, traced back to ornamental castor bean plants grown in residential gardens whose owners had no idea what they were growing. If you currently have a castor bean plant in your garden, and you have children, grandchildren visiting, pets of any kind, or neighbors with either of those, remove it. Wear heavy gloves while removing it. Bag the plant material in heavy contractor-grade trash bags and dispose of it with regular household waste, not with yard refuse and not with composting material. Clean any tools thoroughly afterward. Wash your hands and arms thoroughly when finished. There are dozens of dramatic tropical-looking ornamentals that pose no comparable risk. Banana plants, elephants in non-toxic cultivars, cannas, and ornamental rhubarbs all provide bold, dramatic foliage without the danger. There is no reason to grow castor bean as an ornamental in any residential setting. Industrial cultivation of castor for legitimate purposes is a different matter handled by specialized agriculture. But that has nothing to do with home gardens. Tell me honestly in the comments below. Of the 7 plants we have covered so far, how many had you ever seen warnings about before today? Because the honest answer for most gardeners is 0, or perhaps 1 if you happen to read a label carefully years ago. That gap between what these plants actually are and what gardeners are told about them is exactly the problem this video is trying to address. Drop your honest number below. Plant 8, trumpet vine, Campsis radicans. Sometimes affectionately called hummingbird vine because the long tubular orange and red flowers are genuinely a powerful hummingbird magnet. Sometimes less affectionately called cow itch, or trumpet creeper, or simply the hell vine, by experienced gardeners who have learned what living with it actually involves. Trumpet vine is native to the southeastern United States and hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9, which means it grows almost anywhere in the country. The flowers are beautiful, appearing in clusters from midsummer through early fall, vivid orange-red trumpets that hummingbirds genuinely love. That single feature is why the plant continues to be sold at garden centers, despite its documented destructive habits. The aggression of trumpet vine is difficult to communicate properly to someone who has never seen it in person. The plant spreads by both underground runners and by self-seeding simultaneously. The runners can travel 20 or 30 feet from the parent plant before sending up new shoots, meaning a vine planted at one end of your yard can emerge through your lawn at the opposite end within a few years. It climbs anything within reach, attaching with aerial rootlets that grip tightly and damage paint, wood, mortar, and siding. It engulfs trees. It buries small structures. Garden sheds have been swallowed entirely by mature trumpet vine in less than a single growing season. There is also a contact hazard that catches many gardeners by surprise. The sap of trumpet vine contains compounds that cause skin irritation, ranging from mild itching to genuine contact dermatitis with redness, blistering, and rash. The reaction varies by individual, but enough gardeners react badly enough that the plant has earned the common name cow itch from generations of rural workers who handled it without protection. Wear long sleeves and heavy gloves anytime you prune or remove trumpet vine. If you want hummingbirds, plant cardinal flower, salvia, bee balm, or honeysuckle vine instead. All 4 attract hummingbirds reliably without the destructive habit or the skin irritation. If you already have trumpet vine and want it gone, the removal project is a multi-year commitment. Cut all visible growth to the ground, dig out as much of the root system as you can find, and monitor the area weekly for emerging shoots from any remaining root fragments. Each shoot must be removed promptly. After 2 to 3 years of consistent removal, the plant finally exhausts its underground reserves and gives up. Plant 9, Lantana, Lantana camara. The brightly colored, shrubby, flowering plant beloved by butterfly gardeners and warm climate landscapers, with dense flower clusters that shift through multiple colors as they age, yellow to orange to red to pink, all on the same plant at the same time. It is genuinely one of the most visually distinctive flowering plants available to American gardeners. It is also classified as a serious invasive species in dozens of countries, and as toxic enough to be a documented cause of livestock deaths. Lantana is hardy as a perennial shrub in USDA zones 8 through 11 and grown as an annual in colder zones. In its perennial range, particularly in Florida, Texas, the Gulf Coast, Southern California, and Hawaii, the plant escapes cultivation easily, naturalizes into surrounding habitats, and forms dense, thorny thickets that crowd out native vegetation. Entire ecosystems have been altered by lantana invasions, including some areas where rare native plants have been lost permanently because lantana outcompeted them. The toxicity is concentrated in the unripe green berries that form after flowering. These berries are highly toxic to dogs, cats, horses, sheep, cattle, and other grazing animals. Dogs that chew on lantana berries can suffer severe liver damage, sometimes fatal, sometimes requiring extensive veterinary intervention. Livestock losses in agricultural areas where lantana has invaded pasture land are an ongoing economic problem. Curiously, the ripe black berries that follow are reportedly less toxic, though they are not recommended for consumption. The bigger concern is that pets do not distinguish between unripe and ripe berries, and a dog that develops a habit of chewing on a lantana shrub may eat both as they encounter them. If you live in a cold climate where lantana is grown only as an annual, the invasive risk is lower because frost kills the plant before it can naturalize. The toxicity risk to pets remains. If you live in zones 8 and warmer, the responsible choice is to skip lantana entirely. Substitute pentas for similar continuous color and butterfly attraction without the invasive habit or toxic berries. Both provide the bold tropical color lantana offers without the documented risks. Yellow flag iris, Iris pseudochorus. The bright yellow flowering iris of pond edges, water gardens, and damp meadow plantings, beloved for its tall sword-shaped foliage and dramatic golden flowers in early summer, and classified as a noxious invasive species in numerous American states, several Canadian provinces, and across most of the United Kingdom, where it is considered one of the most damaging aquatic invasives in the country. Yellow flag iris is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9 and grows in almost any wet environment. Pond edges, stream banks, drainage ditches, low spots in lawns, and seasonally flooded meadows are all suitable habitat. The plant spreads aggressively by both seeds and underground rhizomes, with seeds capable of floating on water and traveling miles downstream before establishing new colonies. Once it takes hold in a waterway or wetland, it forms dense monoculture mats that displace every native plant in the area. The ecological damage is severe. Native wetland plants disappear. The waterfowl and amphibians that depend on those native plants for food and habitat decline along with them. Water flow through smaller streams and drainage channels can become physically impeded by the density of yellow flag growth, contributing to flooding problems on neighboring properties. State wildlife agencies have spent millions of dollars on yellow flag removal projects in protected wetland areas where the plant has invaded. There is also a personal risk for gardeners. The sap of yellow flag iris is a skin irritant, and the plant itself is toxic to grazing animals and to dogs and cats. Cases of poisoning are uncommon but documented, primarily when livestock or pets eat the rhizomes or leaves directly. If you want a yellow flowering plant for a wet site, the native yellow swamp iris, Iris virginica or Iris versicolor, occupies the same ecological niche, looks similar, and supports rather than displaces native wildlife. Choosing the native option instead of the invasive yellow flag is one of the simplest ecological decisions any home gardener can make. 10 plants in, and if you have made it this far, you are clearly serious about understanding what is in your garden and what should not be. Subscribe to this channel right now if you have not already. The gardeners who watch this content all the way through are the ones whose properties are actually safer, whose pets actually live longer, and whose ecosystems are actually healthier. Be that gardener. Plant 11, English Ivy, Hedera helix. The classic evergreen vine of fairy tale cottage walls, of grand estate facades, of decorative ground covers in shaded corners. The plant most homeowners assume must be perfectly safe because it has been planted decoratively for hundreds of years and is sold openly at every garden center in 3 countries. The plant that is actively destroying historic architecture across 2 continents, and that is toxic enough to send dogs to emergency veterinary care. English ivy is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9 and grows successfully in shade conditions where many other plants struggle. The deeply lobed evergreen leaves stay green 12 months a year, and the vine attaches itself to vertical surfaces using small aerial rootlets that grip tightly to any rough texture. That gripping mechanism is exactly what makes the plant so destructive to buildings. On brick walls, the aerial rootlets penetrate into the mortar joints over time, expanding as they grow and gradually breaking apart the mortar. On wooden siding, the rootlets retain moisture against the wood surface, accelerating rot and decay. On painted surfaces, removal pulls paint off in sheets. On historic stone walls, the plant works its way into every existing crack and slowly enlarges them. Restoration costs on buildings damaged by mature English ivy can reach tens of thousands of dollars. The plant is just as destructive in landscape settings as it is on buildings. Where English ivy climbs into trees, it blocks sunlight from reaching the host tree's foliage, weighs down branches significantly when the ivy mass reaches several hundred pounds in mature growth, and eventually kills the tree outright. Forested parks across the eastern United States and the Pacific Northwest have lost significant numbers of mature trees to English ivy invasions, originating from nearby residential plantings. There is also a toxicity hazard for pets. English ivy contains saponins and other compounds that cause severe gastrointestinal upset in dogs and cats. Drooling, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain are typical symptoms. Severe cases require veterinary care. The berries that form on mature ivy plants are particularly attractive to dogs and pose a higher risk than the leaves alone. And the plant is itself an environmental hazard. Dense English ivy ground cover harbors rodents, snakes, and mosquitoes, providing protected breeding habitat at exactly ground level near homes. The vine excludes native ground cover plants that would otherwise support local wildlife. Every responsible local government environmental authority in the United Kingdom and most of the United States now recommends removing English ivy from residential properties wherever possible. If you want an evergreen ground cover or wall climber, choose native alternatives. Virginia creeper provides dramatic red fall color and supports native wildlife. Hardy native ferns offer beautiful evergreen ground cover in shade. Climbing hydrangea provides spectacular flowers in addition to climbing habit. All three serve the same landscape purposes English ivy is used for, without any of the destruction. Now here is the question that matters most after all of this. If these plants are this dangerous, if they damage homes and harm pets and threaten ecosystems, why are they still sold openly at garden centers across 3 countries? The answer is genuinely simple, and it is worth understanding. Garden centers and nursery suppliers operate within a regulatory environment that treats ornamental plants as essentially unregulated consumer products, similar to candles or decorative pottery. There is no federal requirement in most countries to label plants with toxicity information, no requirement to verify customers understand the risks, and no requirement to refuse sale based on the buyer's circumstances. The same plant that could kill a small child if eaten is sold next to the petunias, with no label, no warning, no question asked. That is the entire system as it currently exists. The responsibility, therefore, falls entirely on you, the home gardener, to know what you are bringing onto your property. That is not fair. It is genuinely not fair, and it should be different. But until it is different, video content like this is essentially the only protective layer between an unsuspecting homeowner and a plant decision that could cause real harm. Share this video with anyone you know who gardens. Talk to your friends and family. Help close the information gap that the industry itself has refused to close. 3 rules will keep your garden safer for the rest of your gardening life. Most gardening content covers none of them. Rule 1. Research the toxicity of every plant before you buy it. Before any new plant goes into your cart at the garden center, take 30 seconds with your phone, look up the botanical name and the word toxicity, and read what comes up. The ASPCA maintains a free public database of plants toxic to dogs and cats. Most state cooperative extension services publish similar databases for human risks. 30 seconds of research can prevent a plant decision you would otherwise live with for years. Rule 2. Know the difference between a native and an invasive alternative. For nearly every dangerous or invasive plant on this list, there is a native alternative that provides the same visual benefit without the documented harm. American wisteria instead of Asian wisteria. Native swamp iris instead of yellow flag. Virginia creeper instead of English ivy, pentas instead of lantana. The native alternatives are also better for local pollinators, local soil systems, and local wildlife. Choosing native is not just safer, it is ecologically better in every measurable way. Rule 3. If you find any of these plants on your property right now, plan their removal seriously, not casually. Some of these, particularly Japanese knotweed and mature trumpet vine, require professional help. Some of them, particularly monkshood and castor bean, require protective equipment to handle. Removing a plant correctly the first time prevents the multi-year reinvasion problems that gardeners commonly face when they try to remove these plants the easy way. Treat the removal with the same seriousness you would give to any other home safety project. You just spent 35 minutes learning 11 plants that most gardeners are growing without ever being told what they actually are. That is the entire reason this video exists. The information was never communicated to you at the point of sale. The labels never warned you. The garden centers had no reason to mention any of this. So if even one plant on this list is currently in your garden, this video has done its job because you now know what most of your neighbors still do not. Share this video with anyone you know who gardens, especially anyone with small children, with pets, or with elderly family members who spend time outdoors. Subscribe to this channel so the next video, which covers 11 plants every American home should actually be growing instead of these, finds you when it drops. The gardeners who learn this information and apply it are the ones who actually create the safe, beautiful, ecologically thriving gardens we all want. Drop one comment below before you go. Tell me which plant on this list surprised you the most, and tell me whether you have any of these growing on your property right now. I read every single comment. This is your garden. This is your responsibility. Now you have the information you need.